Juche Gang news, comrades. I've got one from out of Toronto to kick us off. From the Grind, a growing tenant association at the Crossways secures rent freeze for 2026. Oh, look at that. They didn't need a Mamdani to do it. That's why I wanted to show you this. After the Toronto Tenant Union, TTU, founding convention in April, the group held a rally nearby outside of the Crossways, a residential and commercial complex at Bloor and Dundas Street West. Protesters waved paper mache cockroaches and demanded that the building's landlords take action to deal with the building pest problem. The protest was led by Crossways Tenant Association, a group made up of some of the complex's approximately 1,000 tenants. The association is affiliated with the TTU. Chai Zhang, who is active in the building association as a floor captain and secretary, tells The Grind that 70% of the tenants they surveyed have dealt with cockroaches at some point during their time living here. Renters also complain of hot water shutoffs and worsening building conditions. Zhang says building management is frequently aggressive towards tenant organizers, often demanding that guests of tenants leave the building, a tactic she believes is used to intimidate and prevent collective action. However, this has not prevented the association from demanding better conditions from their landlord. On Victoria Day holiday, May 18th, the Crossways Tenant Association held a celebratory potluck for renters and families just outside the building after securing that rent freeze. And you can read the whole article just by clicking on the Grind words right there. And I wanted to show you this for two reasons. To show you don't need a Mamdani to get rent freeze. So don't rally behind false Democrats that often have false promises. And yeah. Instead, think about forming tenants unions where you can. Tenants unions in some ways. I'm casually going through and thinking of comments to make thinking on it. I know Dave has expressed this thought before as well, but I do think that because we have to be aware of the importance of geospatial reality within our revolution, in that revolution is takes place in a specific place, takes place with needing resources that are grouped together within the community. Geospatial area is very important, and how much time people spent at workplaces was previously why that was the unions are the center of struggle. Today, and I'm not saying that struggling in unions and struggling to improve unions and all of these things are not important struggles, but I'm saying that tenant associations and forming tenant unions are in a way the union of today, where many people work from home, have temporary work, etc. The place where they're at the most is in these spaces under a landlord, amongst other people in those spaces under landlords. Right? Look at that. The state-owned trans clinic prioritizing trans youth is a revolutionary act of care. That bot's doing good. I gotta say, I'm impressed. All right. Next up, from Iran. U.S. limited war strategy against Iran deepens its strategic quagmire, Press TV reports. Don't worry, everyone's all right. In the early hours of Thursday, the U.S. once again attacked southern Iran. The official narratives in Washington are already spinning surgical strikes, proportionate response, mission accomplished. But beneath the fog of disinformation and the wine of cruise missiles and fighter jets lies a deeper strategic truth. I drop scissors. Nobody move. This was no isolated act of aggression, but a calculated move in a long undeclared and unprovoked war. One that bears an eerie and unsettling resemblance of the Third Imposed War, which began on February 28th and halted only after the American side blinked first. Yet this round of military aggression is not a replay of the 40-day war. It is something more insidious, more desperate, and ultimately more fragile. This time, the American war machine relies on calibrated military pressure, psychological warfare, and controlled escalation to force Iran into a political settlement on Americans' terms, without entering a full-scale war that it no longer appears willing or able to sustain. The latest round of aggression is not, at least not directly, about so-called regime change. It is about imposing a specific agreement. The United States does not seek to occupy Iran this time, and it lacks both the appetite and the military capability for that. Instead, the primary objective is to force Iran to sign on the dotted line, an agreement that would impose unreasonable curbs on Iran's peaceful nuclear program, restrict its regional influence, and legitimize a new order of American dominance. This strategy is built around short, localized, carefully calibrated attacks designed to increase pressure on Iran without crossing the threshold into full-fledged war. The underlying calculation is that sustained military and psychological pressure may eventually compel Tehran to make concessions that large-scale imposed war could not achieve. Yet, the very adoption of this strategy reveals an important strategic reality. Time may no longer be working in America's favor. While the Third Imposed War aimed to annihilate the Islamic Republic, the latest attacks aim to chain it. If you cannot destroy your enemy, you try to cage him. And if you try to cage him through limited strikes, you admit that full-scale war is beyond your reach. But here's the fatal flaw in America's fourth path. The entire strategy rests on a single, fragile assumption, which is that Iran will respond in predictable, proportionate, and non-escalatory ways. History, including the recent past, suggests otherwise. Iran has already demonstrated in previous confrontations that its responses can be unpredictable, asymmetric, and devastatingly effective. When the enemy's risk increases, when even the limited operation invites a response that burns bigger than the attack, then this fourth option rapidly becomes ineffective, invalid, and useless. Press TV. This is part of, by the way, a much larger article that if you do have time tonight, take a look at the whole thing. It's a banger much like that. Also from Press TV in Iran, Iran files war crime case. Iran has announced it will pursue legal action in domestic and international judicial bodies following a U.S. airstrike that destroyed 2 drinking water reservoirs in the southern province of Hormozgan. The early morning strike on Wednesday destroyed civilian water infrastructure in Sirak, cutting off access to drinking water for more than 20,000 residents across the town of Kushtak and 10 villages in the Bimani district, where local temperatures exceed 45 degrees Celsius. Mojtaba Kiramni, head of the Hormozgan provincial judiciary, announced that legal action would be pursued in both domestic and international judicial bodies. He cited Article 52 and Article 54 of the 1977 First Additional Protocol to the Geneva Conventions, which explicitly prohibited attacking, destroying, or rendering unusable objects essential to the survival of the civilian population, including drinking water facilities and reservoirs. Yeah, 45 degrees Celsius. And to be fair, this is as well saying it said temperatures exceed 45 degrees Celsius. So they get even hotter. It gets up to the 50s. Yeah, exactly. And they bomb their water. Oh, absolutely they did. Again, part of that though is just I should comment that like part of the reason of filing this is not that they necessarily expect that this is going to have the effect of holding them accountable or to justice in this way, but it gives them another diplomatic way to show to the other countries the hypocrisy and criminality of the US compared to them. And then so here you go. In response to that, we have Handela hacks California water systems in a warning. A pro resident hacktivist group announced that it has breached California water facilities in direct retaliation for the U.S. airstrike that destroyed drinking water reservoirs in southern Iran. The group, known as Handela, said on Thursday that it had targeted California water infrastructure after U.S. forces struck two reservoirs in Sirak, a town in Hormozgan province, cutting off access to drinking water for more than 20,000 residents. Quote, only 2 days ago, Trump destroyed the water sources of the oppressed peoples of Sirak with multi-million-dollar rockets, inflicting forced thirst and suffering in 50-degree heat, Handela said in its statement. Today, retribution has reached the heart of the America. The group said it stopped short of actually cutting off water to American cities, a capability it said it possesses, citing a different ethical code than its adversaries. And then this picture here, you can see this is someone like that got their bill, and you can see Handela hack all over it when they viewed their bill online. Okay, and this here is a piece that I want to read to you in full. This is from the 1963 WW archives. From the 1966 archives, The Murderer's Lament. Medgar Evers, Mississippi 1st NAACP Field Secretary, was fatally shot outside his home in the city of Jackson on June 12, 1963, by the Ku Klux Klan, 1 month shy of his 38th birthday. He led the voting rights campaign throughout the state. The following editorial, written by Workers' World newspaper first editor Vince Copeland, originally appeared in the June 21st, 1963 issue of this newspaper. So we're reading an old article here. Like paid mourners at the Wailing Wall, the political leaders of the U.S. ruling class have joined in a loud and obscene chorus of lamentation at the martyrdom of Medgar Evers. This performance is obscene and revolting. This last-minute lamentation because it is put on by the real murderers of Evers. Segregationist senators James Eastland and John Stennis of Mississippi spouted their regrets in the U.S. Senate and offered their lying consultations to Evers' widow and his real mourners. These veterans of innumerable filibusters against civil rights, these powerful upholders of the Southern way of life, quote unquote, might just as well have fired the bullet that killed Evers themselves. For they certainly educated, indoctrinated, and gave the assassin's courage to the man who did fire it. President John F. Kennedy's indignant protest is just about as worthless and even more hypocritical than these racist rascals. For he is the man who was supposed to have led the whole Congress in civil rights legislation over 2 years ago, 1961. And he openly compromised it because he wanted to win the rest of his program, we were told. From Kennedy on down to the backcountry racist politician, Mayor Thompson of Jackson, every single ruling class mourner of Evers is a hypocrite and a murderer. Only yesterday, the ruling class was completely callous to the cries of the oppressed. Lynchings, shootings, beatings occurred as regularly as the rain, and were less noted by the capitalist rulers. For example, what statesman, what senator, what mayor, what big shot newspaper shed a tear for Emmett Till? Emmett Till was only 14, and he was beaten to death in the cruelest and most sadistic manner, allegedly because he tried to flirt with an adult white woman storekeeper in Money, Mississippi. His murder was even more savage and more revolting than the murder of Medgar Evers. His murderers were freed by an all-white jury and received many thousands of dollars for telling the detailed story of their crime in Look magazine. But the big bosses closed their eyes and ears and acted as though nothing had happened. Only the black masses and their closest allies mourned for Emmett Till. But that was in 1955. Since Emmett Till, there have been a dozen other well-publicized killings. Some of unknown black workers, others of prominent black civil rights fighters, and no reaction from the racist ruling class. But that was before Birmingham. The ruling masters of this capitalist, white supremacist land have now seen the growing demonstrations, marches, and passionate protests, which ever since Birmingham have taken on the resolute and forceful character of a social movement conscious of its revolutionary destiny. And they are desperately anxious to head off this into safe legal channels. Their national mourning and their public indignation is a ghoulish concession to the tearless mourning of the masses who are determined to convert their sorrow to anger. Let no honest worker accept the tears of the enemy. They are as false, as dangerous as the assassin's bullet itself. Good advice. Good advice. It makes me think of something, actually. Kind of like a modern, I'm just thinking, right? Kind of like a modern example of this right here. Listen to this part here. Oh, wait. Sorry, I forgot. I didn't actually bookmark it. It was too nightmarish to actually bookmark. Which should tell you something about what you're about to see here. This reminds me of this clip here.
Long time, and talking about this for a long time, and
it's a flip side of back in the early 2010s, and 2000s, when the gay rights movement was gaining steam. What
the Barney Frank argument?
What people discovered, is that you've got a gay uncle. You actually, once people started coming out of the closet,
the Andrew Sullivan argument.
Once people started coming out of the closet, like, oh, that guy's gay. I love that guy. He's great, and my life is fine around him. This is the reverse for liberals. It's like, this is a white guy And he's actually pretty nice.
A big burly combat vet.
Big burly combat vet.
Someone you could see with family. Joe Rogan.
And he's fine. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Like the current cultural divorce between kind of progressives and white men is so like stark that it's just culturally, morally, ethically wrong, but also just pragmatically from a political perspective, you can't build a national party.
Yeah.
If you assume every white guy, or every white guy with a deep voice as a combat vet or whatever, is like out to get you.
Or if you talk about him in a way that implies he does have sort of built-in problems.
Right.
So
just inherent toxicity or something.
Yeah. Whether you're talking about racism or sexism, yes. And
liberals, man. Liberals are so exhausting, right? Like, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing that they can't fucking get through their mind. He's like, this is like, it's like normalizing white guys, Chi-Chi, you know? Now, Graham Plattner, normalizing the white guys. Everybody's looking at Graham Plattner and thinking, But like, the thing about it too, yeah. La la la. Happy fun. La. Do we need I think we need that, don't we? I feel like we need that. But the thing that they don't understand is, like, it's not about individual white people like that, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's not that. The problem isn't individual white people. The problem is the ideological construct of whiteness, right? And that's what they don't understand. And so it becomes this game of liberal identity politics just like that, where it's like, see, people are seeing themselves, and other combat vets are seeing themselves in Graham Plattner, and they're thinking, yeah, I too can torture people at Abu Ghraib, and then I can also come back and be a senator.
Liberal. Happy fun, la la la. Human smuggling, fentanyl gas. Happy fun, la la la. Human smuggling, fentanyl gas. Liberal. Happy fun, la la la. Human smuggling, fentanyl gas. Happy fun, la la la. Human smuggling, fentanyl gas. Liberal.
What is the issue with Graham Plattner? I don't get it exactly. He's a liberal. He's a part of the Democratic Party. And both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are both... I mean, forget the fact about him being an individual, right? Forget the individual problems. The main systematic problem is that he's a part of the Democratic machine. He's a part of the DNC, which is not functionally any different than the Republican Party. So we don't, like, even if he wasn't an imperialist war criminal, which he is, but even if he wasn't that, we would still have essentially the same problem with him, because again, like, he's a liberal Democrat that doesn't want to actually change anything to make the working class better, right? He might think he wants to. In his greatest intentions, he might believe that that's what he wants to do, right? But at the end of the day, the limitations of his ideology, the limitations of the political spectrum that he works in, means that could never be accomplished. It's the same reason why we oppose, like, AOC, for example, right? Or at least I'm assuming a bunch of my chat opposes AOC. You know? Like our criteria is, are they organized in a communist party? If the answer is yes, then we can go on and ask other questions. If the question is, are they organized in a communist party? And then the answer is no, I don't give a fuck about them, to be honest. I don't give a fuck. I've heard people say Graham Plattner participated in the military, did all this nightmare shit, so I kind of knew that right away, right? Have you heard about the boycott of Asian business and black communities after that awful shooting? I'm wondering if I smell COINTELPRO, because as far as I know, there's no structure or actionable demands. Hate to say it, but from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of issue between the black and Asian communities. That's completely overblown, Mac. No. There's not a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues, like, it gets reported often as if there is. But no. It's completely oversold to a massive degree in order to make it look like, to try and stoke those disagreements for the exact reason of giving that appearance. All right, before we do the Cuba news, actually, unfortunately, I want you to see this. Because also, rogue state, threat to the world. I hate to do this to you, but look, Pete Hegseth, still in Cuba here. Still in fucking Cuba, chat.
To the War Department, if we need to negotiate with bombs, we'll negotiate with bombs. And we're very good at it. Nobody better in the world. And so our
this is right after he came back.
Don't get into that game. Don't get into the game where you're threatening Americans or the American homeland, because that won't go well for them. For them not to go in that direction, which only creates the kind of threat the United States may have to deal with. To the War Department, if we need to negotiate with
bombs. Who let Pete into Cuba?
We'll negotiate with bombs.
Have you heard of Guantanamo Bay?
Better in the world. And so our message to Cuba is, don't get into that game. Don't get into the game where you're threatening.
Yeah, he went to Guantanamo Bay. And then he like trained with the troops there, and then he gave some kind of talk. That's where he was in Cuba. Meanwhile, Cuba Granma News reports that they're refining domestic crude oil. Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing, Chi-Chi, actually. Plattner and Hegseth are like very close to the same people, in a sense. Perfect, that's a perfect analogy. They're like the same people with slightly different views on social issues, quote unquote. But not really. Just on what social issues will better get one party elected over the other. In 2024, Granma had already been investigated the process of heavy crude oil, which our country imported, using a solvent that brought it to 16 degrees API, created by a team of specialists at Hermanos Diaz Oil Refinery to convert it into medium crude, and once distilled, obtain the derivatives. That technological feat allowed our company to leave behind the period.
Drugs!
Drugs!
I choose drugs! Drugs!
I will choose drugs as soon as I'm done this. As soon as we're done this, we'll choose drugs while we watch some videos, and then we'll game with the comrades. So here, the engineer, Irene Barbado, is quoted as saying, "The technological feat allowed our company to leave behind the period between 2016 and 2021, marked by losses, meager production, and regrettable exodus of engineers, technicians, and service personnel." Acknowledged engineer Irene Barbado Lucio general director of this branch of the Cuban Petroleum Union. Because the diesel obtained from domestic crude does not meet all the standards for commercialization, it was necessary to blend it with a higher degree fuel to make it usable. The May run met objectives. The extra heavy fuel oil is being used at the Antonio Maceo thermoelectric power plant with positive results, and its use in the nickel industry is being evaluated. Even though the processed amount does not cover the country's demand, it represents a technological advancement for making more efficient use of endogenous energy resources. Quote, therefore, we reiterate that given the high sulfur content, acidity, and viscosity of the Cuban crude, specialists were required to perform calculations and adjustments to optimize and facilitate the refining process, stated Yanet Rivia Luna, senior specialist at the technology department. Thus, the crude oil washing systems were rehabilitated. They import oil. And the dosage of the new product called Vapin 220 PE was established. This product serves as a neutralizer and the top of the atmospheric distillation tower for corrosive acids that form during the fractionation process, the specialist affirmed. Taking into account the characteristics of Cuban oil, a line was constructed to collect the polluting gases released at the top of the vacuum distillation tower. These gases are then burned in the furnaces, thereby contributing to environmental protection of the health of the workers. Grandma News. So they bought a whole bunch of heavy crude a while ago. And now they have been figuring out how to refine it into more usable, which is what they're doing now to make up for the shortages as much as they can anyway. And then on top of that, you have China bringing in solar panels. Yeah, it would be. I mean, it is showing success, like it said. They said that they are using it in one of the energy sectors at the Antonio Maceo thermoelectric power plant. It's being used right now and showing positive results. So, viva la Cuba. Cuba will win. This one is from Lao. Lao, China reaffirms strategic partnership. Lao and China reaffirmed their strong and long-standing partnership. At the
New
10th...
tip from Chubby Shark. Chubby Shark supported with 5.
Yo, Chubby Shark, thank you so much, comrade, for your support. Means a ton. Hearts, little hearts, big hearts. Appreciate that so much. Lao and China reaffirmed their strong and long-standing partnership. And after watching Luna Oi's video yesterday about that Israeli infiltration into some policy making, some media in Vietnam, we understand now how important China is as an ally to these socialist states, right? Because I do think that comrades were correct in their analysis that a thing that has allowed Israel to take advantage of that in Vietnam is the fact that it has one of the weakest relationships with China out of the other socialist countries. I do believe that will change, but I do have a pretty staunch revolutionary optimism, although I welcome you to do the same. I invite you to join me in that. So Lao and China reaffirmed their strong and long-standing partnership as the 10th China South Asia Expo at the 30th China Kunming Province Import and Export Fair opened in Kunming, Yunnan Province on June 11th. Addressing the opening ceremony, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Satyajit Bonavane highlighted the significance of the 2026 and the 65th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Lao and China in the year of Lao-China friendship. He noted that the two countries continue to enjoy a comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership based on the four goods: spirit of good neighbors, good friends, good comrades, and good partners. Lao News Agency, KPL. Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at too, Virgo. Okay, and then we've got actually an article from Vietnam here. This is ancient stilt houses in Bien Chung, nestled in the remote valley of Bien Chung Commune, Nam Gan Province, surrounded on all sides by towering mountain ranges, and separated by the winding and treacherous Buliu and Phu slopes. The ancient stilt houses of the Thai people have quietly survived for hundreds of years. More than just residences, these ancient houses in the villages of Xian, Dien, Quan, Quay, and Tong are also living museums, preserving the rich traditional culture, reflecting the unique architectural essence and spiritual life of the Thai people in the mountainous region of Nha An. Vietnam News Agency. And here's the house. Look, I'll show you this close up here. Oh, there. Look at that. There's the stilt house in the woods like that. Hundreds of years old. Probably older than the US. I love this detail of it too. This is like the staircase at the top of the staircase. See, you can see the stair there. It's like a dragon. See, it's like a dragon head at the top of the stairs. I love that detail. That's so cool. And then this is looking up at the rafters. And then here's more of the outside of it. There's multiple of them. I think this is the oldest one though. Incredible, huh? Bin Chan. Ancient Thai homes. Yeah, the small details, the handiwork, you can tell some real love was put into it. My internet's being shitty. Hopefully the stream's holding up for everyone. If not, bear with me, it's just shitty Nova Scotia internet. I'm honestly surprised they lasted so long considering how they aren't flat on the ground. Yeah, I mean, that's part of what protects them though, probably, right? Because this is like jungle. So you think about like, I bet that ground gets pretty fucking wet at certain times of the year. All right, we got China coming up next as part of our socialist headline segment. The right to development is key. The right to development is a practical tool to fix challenges of inequality, conflict, and climate change, says UN Special Rapporteur Surya Deva, as more weapons do not really result in more peace. Yes, I am. I am indeed. And here, I want you to see this piece.
The global human rights governance should ensure a dignified life within planetary boundaries for every human being everywhere. However, the current international order is leaving behind too many people and is destroying the environment. That is where the right to development offers practical tools to achieve inclusive, sustainable, and participatory development. Let me illustrate very briefly how several elements of the right to development can address the crises of inequalities, conflicts, and climate change. First, the 1986 Declaration on the Right to Development envisages a fair distribution of the benefits of economic development, and that's why states and other actors must ensure that the root causes of structural inequalities are addressed. Second, since the process of development matters, the right to development requires an active, free, and meaningful participation of people in decision making. Third, sustainability has been inbuilt in the right to development since the 1992 Rio Declaration. In fact, any economic development which is not sustainable is not really a development. At the same time, a just transition towards green economy cannot be just unless it integrates the principles of right to development, such as intergenerational equity and common but differentiated responsibilities. Fourth, in line with the 1986 declaration, states should pursue disarmament and spend the saved resources in achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. More weapons do not really result in more peace. Finally, the right to development underscores the importance of international cooperation. North, South, and triangular cooperation is essential to overcome all the challenges that I mentioned.
There you go. That's from China's Development Forum that they held, which was all about overcoming challenges of poverty and encouraging people to look to China as a model of that. I do think that a good video to watch related to this would be Radhika Desai's talk about Russia that we watched the other day. I thought that was really good and relevant to that. Okay, and I've got I got 2 articles from DPRK for you today. We got, first up, Rich Kelp Harvest from DPRK. In Simpho City offshore farm, built as a model of offshore farming in the new century, has greeted the second kelp harvesting season since inauguration. Over 100 tons of kelp is harvested every day at present. This proud reality is a clear demonstration of the validity and vitality of our party's policy on putting regional economy on the shore developing track by making good use of mountains in mountainous areas and sea in coastal regions. The respected General Secretary Kim Jong-un talked at the inauguration ceremony of the offshore forum that the officials, technicians, and employees should revitalize offshore agriculture by drawing on the good experience gained in the first year sea farming, continue to play the vanguard role in transforming the structure of the fishing industry on the basis and carrying on business management methodologically so as to powerfully guarantee the development of the regional economy. It paid primary attention to raising the scientific level to the maximum through the whole process, ranging from management of farming grounds to the management of farmer grounds to the maintenance of ecological environments, while actively developing advanced technologies. As a result, it has further increased the output per hectare. Now, its officials and employees work by the sweat of their brow to increase the operation rate of ships to the full, manage the farming facilities in a responsible manner, and timely harvest full-grown kelp. Members of the women's union in the city went out to the field and joined the employees in processing kelp. There you go. The women's union pitched in as well. They definitely have cough AIDS? Huh? History of new socialist rural construction is my last one. I swear to God, 90% of Kim's job is to go to inaugurations and new developments. I mean, that's part of it. He goes there to, like, inspect a workplace and give the viewpoint of, like, working class people. Like, try to see things from if it's serving the people good or not. Like when he went to the bag factory and he was like, yo, these straps are going to be far too thin for school children. It's going to hurt their shoulders. That was like that was his criticism when he went to the bag factory. I wonder what the bot will say. A new history of socialist rural construction. Agricultural workers make up the main force of socialist construction with the working class. It is the firm will of the respected comrade General Secretary Kim Jong-un to train our agricultural workers into communists, who have been revolutionized and armed with the Juche idea, and consolidate our revolutionary force politically and ideologically, and thus powerfully propel socialist construction. The agricultural workers still keep in their minds the benevolent measure he took in the plenary meeting of the party central committee to totally discharge the then cooperative farms from the huge sum of state loans they hadn't yet redeemed, as part of an important step to reinforce the economic foundations of the farm. Also cherished in their hearts are the precious guidelines and measures of love to let them turn out in farming with confidence, after realizing the validity and vitality of the party's policy on switching the country's grain production structure through actual experience. The wonderful scenes of modern rural dwellings and the meaningful farm machines threading through the farm fields. Under such great love and trust of his, and thanks to such efforts and pains of his, our agricultural workers are growing up to be the steadfast rural revolutionaries, faithfully upholding the party's socialist rural construction plan. True patriotic farmers possessed of gem-pure loyalty to the party and ardent love for the country, and reliable masters of implementation of the rural revolution program in the new era. The looks of our agricultural workers, trained to be communists possessed in the Juche idea, intelligent workers, and masters of new civilization, under the energetic guidance of the respected Comrade General Secretary, vividly show the validity and vitality of the rural revolutionary program in the new era and the rosy future to be brought by it. A great new history of socialist rural construction continues, along with the rural revolutionary program in the new era. I wonder what it'll say about this. What is DPRK's Rural Revolution Program? I'm just curious what it will say. The DPRK's Rural Revolution Program is the key of Juche. Focus on agricultural collectivization, self-reliance, and improving rural life to break imperialist exploitation. It emphasizes empowering peasants through cooperative farms, modern farming techniques, and local industry development, all guided by socialism and mobilizing the masses to build a strong, independent economy, free from imperialist control. And that brings you to the end of the news today. A Tank Tube production. And if you click on this, by the way, you can see all of our dear Tank Tube members.